You won't believe what happened to me last night. I still can't wrap my head around it. I've been working at this tech startup for over 3 years. I dedicated my heart and soul to it. I came up with this brilliant idea, one that I was sure would take the company to the next level. My boss, Greg, loved it. He called it the future. I was ready for recognition, for my big break. I thought this was my moment. But instead of applause, I got fired. And if that wasn't enough, the worst part? Greg stole my idea. But here's the kicker. I wasn't just going to sit back and let him win. I wasn't about to walk away empty-handed. I was going to take the company. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, you're going to want to hear this. If you've ever had your hard work stolen, you're not alone. Comment 1 if you've ever wanted to fight back. Like this video if you've ever been forced to rise from the ashes. Subscribe for the next part of the story. You won't want to miss what happens next. I'm Leah, and for the past 3 years, I worked at a small but rapidly growing tech startup. When I first joined, it felt like everything was aligned perfectly. It wasn't just a job. It was my passion, my future, my chance to make a real difference. And Greg, my boss, he was the one who believed in me from the start. He was charismatic, always smiling, always confident. At first, he seemed like the perfect mentor, always there with advice and praise. I admired him. I trusted him. I couldn't have asked for a better boss. Or so I thought. But then there was the shift. It started subtly, almost imperceptible. Greg became more distant, more preoccupied. The long meetings that once made me feel like I was truly contributing became short and dismissive. At first, I didn't think much of it. After all, we were a growing company, and the pressure was building. But then came the small, telling signs. I would be in a meeting with him and others on the team, and I'd throw out an idea, only for Greg to immediately shut it down. No feedback, no suggestions, just a quick, "No, that's not right." But when I'd leave the room, I'd see him excitedly pitching the same idea to investors or our partners. He'd add his own spin, making it seem like it was his original thought. And the worst part? I couldn't bring it up. I couldn't confront him without feeling like I was being petty. It wasn't just Greg. My co-workers started acting differently around me. Hannah, one of my closest friends at the company, seemed a little too friendly with Greg. It wasn't that I didn't trust Hannah, but there was something about the way she'd look at him when he talked. It was like there was a secret I wasn't in on. The little glances they exchanged when I wasn't around it made my stomach turn. At home, it wasn't any better. My husband, Eric, had always been supportive of my career. He loved hearing about my ideas and achievements. But as the weeks went by, I noticed him growing more distant. It wasn't that he was unhappy with me, but there was something in his eyes that I couldn't quite figure out. Sometimes I'd catch him staring at me as if I were a stranger. We'd barely talk about my day anymore. It was as if he wasn't interested in the things that used to excite him about my work. And then there was my best friend, Mark. We had been through everything, together: high school, college, work. He was always the one to tell me when I was being too naive. But lately, his advice felt off. One evening, over dinner, he mentioned that maybe I should just focus on my family instead of stressing over work. It wasn't that he was wrong, but his words stung. Mark knew how much this company meant to me, how much I meant to the company. But none of it hit me harder than the day Greg called me into his office. "You're being let go," he said. And that was the last I heard from him. Just like that, everything I had worked for, everything I had poured my soul into, was ripped away. And in the hours that followed, I kept replaying those moments, the stolen ideas, the strange looks from Greg and Hannah, Eric's distant eyes, and Mark's cryptic advice. The pieces clicked into place, and I realized how blind I had been. Greg wasn't just taking credit for my work. He was taking control of my future, and I couldn't let that happen. As I stood there, processing the weight of what had just occurred, I felt a surge of determination rising in me. It wasn't just about getting back at Greg. It was about proving to myself that I was capable of more than being his employee. I was going to take what was mine, take back my idea, my work, and my future. I was going to take the company. The days after I was fired felt like a blur. At first, I just kept replaying everything in my head. How could Greg do this to me? I had trusted him, but I couldn't focus on that for too long. I knew I had to act quickly if I was going to get my idea back and show everyone what I was capable of. But then something happened that made my stomach drop. It started with a casual email from one of the engineers, Dan, who'd always been friendly but never too involved with the higher-ups. He asked if I'd be willing to meet up for coffee. "We need to talk about what's happening at the company," he said. I agreed, thinking he just wanted to catch up, maybe offer some sympathy. I didn't expect the bombshell he was about to drop. When we met, Dan was visibly tense. He kept glancing around, as if afraid someone might see us. He slid his phone across the table to me. On the screen was a recordinga meeting between Greg and the investors. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There, in that room, Greg was boasting about the product we'd worked on together. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. He was claiming the idea was his. He was pitching it like it had come from his own mind, and the investors were eating it up. "We're going to dominate the market with this," he said. "This is going to change everything." I felt a fire building in my chest. How could he be this bold? How could he sit there and lie like this? To everyone. My idea, my creation, was now being sold as his. But that wasn't even the worst part. What I saw next made my hands shake with rage. Dan swiped to the next video. It was Greg and Hannah having a private conversation after the meeting. Hannah was saying, "This is all going according to plan. We've got them all fooled." And Greg just laughed, like he had pulled off some kind of heist. "It's working. I'll keep her out of the picture. She'll never know what hit her." I could feel my face turning red with anger. This wasn't just a betrayal, this was calculated. They weren't just taking my idea. They were plotting against me, systematically pushing me out of the picture. I stared at the screen, unable to tear my eyes away from the video. Every word felt like a slap to the face. The plan was clear now. Greg and Hannah had been in this together from the start. They had always known that if my idea worked, they could steal it from me, sell it as their own, and I'd never be able to prove anything. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears. The rage inside me was building to a point where I couldn't hold it back anymore. This wasn't just a corporate theft. This was personal. They had taken my future, my livelihood, and they were laughing about it. I stood up abruptly, almost knocking over my coffee cup. Dan looked up at me, concerned. "Leah, you okay?" But I didn't answer. I couldn't even speak. My hands were shaking, and I could feel the weight of everything I had worked for crashing down on me. I walked out of the cafe without saying another word. The only thing I could think of was how I was going to make them pay for this, how I was going to take back what was rightfully mine. That night, I went home and sat in front of my computer, replaying the video over and over again. I was determined to make a move. I couldn't let Greg and Hannah get away with this. I was done being the victim. I knew what I had to do now. It was time to take back my idea, and I was going to do whatever it took to make sure Greg and Hannah paid for what they had done. I had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Every plan, every move I made was calculated. I had the evidence, I had the resources, and I was ready to take back what was mine. Nothing was going to stop me from confronting Greg and taking control of the company. I had gathered my team, those few employees who still believed in me. We were going to present our own product to the investors, the one Greg had stolen from me. I had done my research. I knew the angles. I knew the weaknesses. It was foolproof. But nothing could prepare me for what happened next. It was the day of the investor meeting. I walked in with my head held high, ready to show them that my version of the product was better. I had prepared my pitch. I had a whole presentation ready to go. And as I stood there in front of them, looking at Greg and the investors, I felt a sense of victory. I was about to get my revenge, and I would take back everything he had stolen. But just as I began to speak, my phone buzzed. A message from Dan, the engineer who had given me the video footage. I quickly glanced at it, and my heart stopped. "Leah, you need to see this, now." I felt the ground beneath me shift. What was it? I quickly excused myself from the meeting, walking to the back office. I opened the message, heart racing. There, in black and white, was something I had never expected. It was a screenshot of an email, but not just any email. It was an email from my husband, Eric. The subject line read, "Meeting with Greg, next steps." I stared at the email, my mind racing. The email was dated just a week before I was fired, just days before I'd launched my own product. Eric had been meeting with Greg, strategizing. They were working together. My husband, my own husband, was part of the plan. I could hardly breathe. This couldn't be real. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the rest of the email. There were details about how they'd use me, use my trust, and take advantage of everything I'd created. And the worst part? They planned to make me believe it was all my fault when it all fell apart. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Greg wasn't just betraying me. This had been a conspiracy from the start. My own husband had been in on it the whole time. I felt the world spinning around me. I was suffocating. How could this happen? How could the one person who was supposed to be on my side, the person I had shared everything with, betray me like this? I couldn't think straight. My vision blurred with anger and disbelief. I wanted to scream. I wanted to destroy everything. But as I stood there, looking at the email, the cold truth settled in. Eric wasn't just an innocent bystander. He had been part of the plan to steal my idea, to undermine me from the inside out. The room started to spin. My knees buckled, and I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. I couldn't breathe. I didn't know if I was going to cry or scream or just collapse. I had been played by the two people I trusted the most. I needed answers, but I couldn't even think straight enough to ask the right questions. How could I confront Eric? How could I go back to him after everything I had just learned? And how had I missed all the signs? Had he been lying to me all along? Did he ever care about me? Or was this all just a part of his plan? I didn't know where to go from here. I had planned to take down Greg and take control of my future. But now, I realized I was facing something far worse than I could have ever imagined. I wasn't just fighting for my idea. I was fighting for my life. And the worst part? I didn't know who to trust anymore. The days after the truth came out felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My entire world had turned upside down in the blink of an eye. The betrayal wasn't just from Greg. It wasn't just about the company or the product I had worked so hard on. No, it was much worse than that. The person I thought I trusted most, the person I had shared my dreams and future with, my husband, Eric, had been in on it all along. I couldn't bring myself to look at him after I found out. His face, how could I ever look at it the same way again? He sat there, with those empty eyes, saying nothing, as though he had no idea why I was so angry, so hurt. But deep down, I knew he knew exactly what he had done. He was the one who had helped Greg steal my idea. He was the one who had been planning behind my back, pretending to be the loving husband while pulling strings for his own gain. I had never felt so alone in my entire life. It was like my entire reality was a lie. The person who was supposed to be my support, my partner, was the one who had stabbed me in the back. I don't even know how long we sat there in silence. But then I finally broke. "How could you do this?" I whispered, the words barely coming out. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he said, "I thought it was for the best. You were never going to be happy there. You didn't understand the bigger picture, Leah." That was it. That was the moment I realized it was over. Everything I had worked for, my marriage, my career, my trust, had been shattered. The man I thought I could count on had betrayed me in the worst way possible. I left the house that night. I didn't say anything. I just packed my bags and walked out, with nothing but a burning rage and a hollow emptiness inside me. I couldn't stay in the same place where I had once felt safe. I had to go. I didn't know where. I didn't know what to do. All I knew was that I couldn't stay there and pretend everything was okay. The next few days were a blur. I cut ties with Greg. He was no longer the mentor I thought he was. He had stolen my work, manipulated me, and had the audacity to try and justify it as business. But what hurt more than anything was losing Eric. Losing the man who had promised to be by my side through everything. We never spoke again after that night. It was like we had both become strangers in our own home. I tried to reach out to my friends, but even they felt distant. My best friend, Mark, the one person who had always been there for me, pulled away. I could feel his discomfort through the phone. I didn't even have the strength to ask why. I just let him go. Everyone seemed to fade away, and all I was left with was the cold, empty space inside me. I had spent my entire life fighting for something, for someone, and now I was completely alone. It was like I had lost my sense of self. The person I had worked so hard to become had been stripped away in an instant. I was no longer the Leah who had dreamed of success, of building something from the ground up. I wasn't even the Leah who had believed in love and trust. I was just a shell of who I used to be. But the pain wasn't just about what I had lost, it was about the guilt. The guilt of knowing that I had given so much to a man who didn't deserve it. The guilt of trusting someone so blindly, of letting them control my life without realizing it. I kept asking myself, why didn't I see the signs sooner? But deep down, I knew there was nothing more I could have done. I had loved Eric with all my heart. I had given him everything. The betrayal wasn't my fault. It was theirs, Greg's, and Eric's. They were the ones who chose to destroy everything I had worked for. And yet, here I was, questioning myself. The days bled into weeks, and I found myself stuck in a cycle of anger and sorrow. I thought about what I could have done differently. I wondered if things would have been different if I had known sooner, if I had been more careful, more cautious. But there were no answers, only the same empty space, the same overwhelming pain. There was no going back. I couldn't undo what had been done, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to stay down forever. No matter how much they had taken from me, I still had a fire inside me, and I would get it all back. The story quickly spread across Reddit, where people were pouring out their thoughts on what Leah had just gone through. Some were firmly on her side, while others were critical, questioning how she hadn't seen the signs earlier. Honestly, I'd do the same thing as Leah. Being betrayed by your own husband who you built everything with? There's no coming back from that. Greg and Eric both deserve to burn for this. If it were me, I wouldn't even give them a chance to fix things. One user wrote, fully supporting Leah. But not everyone agreed. Some users took a different view. I get Leah's pain. I really do. But how did she not see this coming? Eric was acting weird for months. I don't get how Leah didn't pick up on the signs. Greg and Eric both messed up, but Leah needs to take a look at herself too. Another comment pushed back, offering a more critical take. Then there was one comment that couldn't help but add some sarcasm. This is exactly why I say never trust anyone too much. Eric thought he was smart, playing both sides, but he ended up looking like the biggest loser here. Leah's got a chance to take back the company, but can she ever trust herself again? The user wrote, their words laced with bitter irony. Yet, most comments were firmly in Leah's corner. Anyone in Leah's shoes would feel the same way. She poured her heart into this company, and now the people closest to her have stabbed her in the back. I really don't understand what Eric was thinking when he helped Greg screw her over, but I know one thing: Leah's gonna rise up stronger than ever. She might have lost everything, but she'll take it all back, someone else commented, offering words of hope. There were some who offered advice. I really hope Leah learns from this. Revenge won't heal wounds. She's going to have to rebuild her life after the dust settles. And that's going to take more than just anger. Leah will be fine, but she needs to think beyond just getting even, said another user, offering a more reflective perspective. But no matter the viewpoint, it was clear that Leah had reached a pivotal moment. The tension wasn't over. What she did next would determine if she could rise above this betrayal or let it consume her. One thing was certain, though. Leah wasn't going to stay the victim. She was taking control. The next move was hers to make. So here we are. Leah has discovered the shocking truth her own husband, Eric, was part of the betrayal, working with Greg to steal her hard-earned idea. The pain of being let down by the one person she trusted most, combined with the corporate betrayal, has left her reeling. She's now faced with an impossible situation. How does she move forward from here? She's fought hard to build her career, and now everything's been ripped away. Does she continue to fight for what's hers? Or does she walk away from it all and start over? Can she ever forgive Eric, who was supposed to stand by her side but instead worked behind her back? But the real question is, what would you do in Leah's shoes? Would you keep pushing for revenge, or would you try to rebuild and move on? Would you ever be able to forgive someone who betrayed you in such a profound way? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think is at fault here? Greg? Eric? Or is it just a mix of everyone's wrong choices that led to this moment? Like this video if you believe that people like Greg and Eric deserve to face the consequences of their actions. Share it if you know someone who's been through a similar betrayal. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that dive deep into real-life drama and tough decisions. Your support means the world. Thank you for being part of this journey with me.